It's day 2. Everyone has survived. It's Black Hat 2025. We're here. We're recording live shows all week from the CyberRisk TV studio at beautiful Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. I'm Doug White, and joining me for this interview is Jackie McGuire.
Good morning.
I almost read what it said on the screen. I was like, wait, you're not Ted.
No. I don't think I look like a Ted.
No, you don't. You're somebody very remarkable. So it's like, I can't compete with you. It's like,
I'm hoping that on camera I look more showered than I actually am. So my hotel didn't have water this morning for anybody who's not following me on social media to see my rants about it. Yeah, well, it came on right as I was walking out the door to get my car from valet. So we did the perfume and deodorant and just put enough hairspray in the hair to make it look like I took a shower.
We won't tell anybody,
better
but
than that.
You just did on live, but
Oops. So what did you talk about yesterday?
And here's one that wasn't what we were talking about earlier. One of the interesting ones I had was about supply chain. And this was from somebody who does research on supply chain, and I really enjoyed the conversation because that's something that's been a sort of nightmare for me since, like, I don't know, the 1980s. I've always felt that way about it. That's what I was talking to her about.
Software supply chain or hardware supply chain or both?
This was more about software supply chain. I think she's interested in all pieces of it because that hardware supply chain is a big issue too. In fact, I saw somebody post a Quora question last night. Not that I was going to answer it, but about like how hard is it to embed things in chips? And it's like, well, it's maybe not hard at all. It depends on the chips and it depends on what you're trying to embed, but it's doable. And if you're making the chips, it's very doable. But that's still back to sort of that whole software idea of like, API, and then I added this lib, and there's 5 more libs, and that led us to talk a little bit about vibe coding, and because I find that terrifying as well. It's like the worst of all possible worlds in the sense that I like the idea. I mean, it's the Earl Grey tea hot, kind of. That's cool.
Well,
but
I love that it reduces the barrier to entry for people who have an idea and want to execute it. Like, I love that, right? Because coming in as a data scientist, kind of knowing how to write Python, but then wanting to expand into other areas, I love that. But I think you're right in that when XEUtils happened, one of the things I started talking about is like, what happens if you're vibe coding and you pull like 75% of an open source package, but you don't know that that's what you pulled?
Right.
Because it just pulls the code, it doesn't pull the package. And so how would you know if you have 75% of XEUtils, embedded in Linux and then the vulnerability happens? So, and it's a huge issue. And, I, as an entry-level data scientist, I did a boot camp. So granted, I didn't do a 4-year program, but it's like, if you can pip install it, it's got to be safe, right? Like if you can import it, and they teach you, like, as a data scientist, they used to, at least, hopefully it's changed. This is 2018. They taught you, like, just import everything because you never know what you're going to need. So just import every package you can think of at the top of your Jupyter notebook. And then it's not like we take those things out.
I mean, I don't honestly have a huge problem with that idea of importing everything. I mean, just as a baseline. I mean, this could get some people upset, but I will explain, as is often the case. I mean, I do that too. So I have a template for coding, like in Python or whatever, just like I had templates for coding in C and on and on, Fortran and on and on. But the problem to me is not that sort of inefficiency, right? I mean, which is sort of what you're bringing up, but rather it's the inefficiency of just lumping all this stuff in that you have no idea what it does. Yeah. Now, I had a template. I knew what all those things were. So I was able to pull them all together and put them in there and say, okay. But I think what I see happening, and I mean, I've seen it, I've witnessed it straight up, was like an LLM saying, oh, you want to write this? Like, be sure you pip this and you pip that and you pip this other thing. You okay?
Yeah, I got a tickle in my throat that's making me cry. I'm not crying. I am kind of crying about supply chain, but
I was crying about supply. I'm not crying. You're crying, but
no, you're crying. It's really sad.
I was just making sure you're okay.
Sad that you're importing all your packages.
I mean, I've had a lot of guests cry on me over the years, and
I feel like we should do a better job with the supply chain. No. I am deathly allergic to cigarette smoke. Like
Okay,
deathly allergic.
I'm no cigarette smoker.
And so having to walk through the casino, just walking through the casino to get to the
yeah.
elevator bank was enough to set off my asthma.
wow.
So I promise I'm not crying because I'm really sad.
You want water?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
But anyway, I mean, what we were talking about was just this problem of an LLM telling someone who's not experienced, who has a great idea, you need to put these 17 libraries in, and those 17 libraries have 17 more libraries, and those 17 libraries have 17 more libraries, and the next thing you know, A, you do have a big inefficient mess, and B, you don't know what all of those things are. I mean, all the way back, so if you think about S-bombs or whatever, you're now going all the way back to the, where was this food grown kind of question.
The other thing is, where did the LLM get that advice? Because my guess is Stack Overflow, and we know how right people are on Stack Overflow. Well, and that's like one of the things I always go back to with LLMs is that an LLM cannot tell the difference between satire, sarcasm, and stupidity. True. And so, I had a motorcycle. I used to race motorcycles, and we had this forum for racing motorcycles. And one of the running jokes was anytime somebody asked about how to boost the performance of your bike, we'd say, well, start with putting a cup of sugar in your gas tank. And it was sarcastic.
Okay, even I know that's bad.
Right, but think about an LLM training. If every time that question comes up, somebody sarcastically says that. And we used to and it's funny because thinking about the early 2000s, remember we used to have a sarcasm font, or we would do like /S to indicate that we were being sarcastic. Right. But LLMs can't. They don't have that gene. They don't tokenize the intent, and so I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. In that, if Stack Overflow, if this one person went across Stack Overflow and answered like 15 of the similar question about like import all these packages and they were wrong. There's no way for a generative AI to know that. So Cursor has some things built in that are supposed to figure that out, right?
And then they're really easy to manipulate, even unintentionally. I'm not talking about like trying to break them or trying to get them to go outside their boundaries, but just if it says you should, you should be sure you've imported NumPy or NumPy. I say NumPy because I like it a lot. It drives some people crazy because they say NumPy, but it's just like, I'm like, I love NumPy. It's a great tool for statistics and all kinds of things. Well, guess what? If it says you should use NumPy and you turn around and go, are you sure NumPy's okay? It may well say, okay, don't use NumPy. Do something else. And so be careful. I mean, don't use an LLM as your vetting tool because it's very easy to push the LLM into other directions that are bad. And the other thing we were talking about in that particular interview was about how the LLMs were inconsistent. She was talking about how she said they had tested all these different LLMs and they would ask it in 3 sentences, please explain the game of baseball. And then comparing the answer. But then what they would do is they would do that, get the answer, wait 3 minutes, ask the question again. And she said they got inconsistent answers constantly. It was just different every time. And I've seen that with code. Like if you say, are you sure this will work? So this is a common thing I try, is it'll say, here's some code to do this module. And I go, are you sure this will work? And it has no confidence at all. Yep. It speaks with absolute authority initially. And says, here's the solution to all your problems. Just inject this, and you're like, wait, is that a good idea? And like, no, you should never inject that, and you're like, wait, okay, a minute ago you told me to inject it. Now you tell me not to inject it. Which is it? Well, sometimes you should inject it and sometimes you shouldn't inject it.
It's a combination of sentiment analysis. So when you say, are you sure, it takes that as the feedback loop is negative. And then because most of these things are also programmed to be overly affirmative to you. Yeah, and
it's very, very obsequious.
Like, oh my God, Doug, you're right. You are the smartest person that's ever used this generative AI
I told
program.
it to please treat me like I was like a god walking the earth.
I mean, you told me that too.
I know. I tell everybody that. I also make it call me Hauser. That's just my.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
But it's weird. What did you talk about yesterday?
I had a couple really interesting sessions. So we had the 360 Privacy came on to talk about executive protection and security and how different it is now than it was before, because before you used to think, he's saying guards, gates, physical access, preventing physical access to your executives, but now it's really more of the OS int and like being aware of people's ability to get their location. And
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and I think it's really I personally had an issue during the pandemic where I became the focus of some people's anger, and they doxed me. They were talking about the school that my kids went to, and like it's a terrifying thing. So I think as the digital and physical worlds kind of converge and the ability to access all of this information increases, it was really interesting to think about. And we were talking about the recent story about how few data brokers are actually complying with requests to remove information. So I use one of the popular I use multiple of the popular services, and people who are registered as data brokers we know aren't complying with the laws. And then there's all these people in Europe who aren't registered as data brokers, but they're buying cell phone tracking data and selling it on, everybody from diplomats to intelligence agents to, and I think it's really fascinating to think about the fact that if you're going to be an executive protection specialist now, you actually really have to be more of a cybersecurity pro than a bodyguard. I
would think so, yeah. I mean, because I honestly hadn't even thought about that. That's very interesting. I mean, maybe it's just sort of business.
Yeah, Chuck was great.
The whole bodyguard thing I couldn't do. They're like, defend me. I'm like, sorry, take him. He's worth more. But I mean, in terms of that digital footprint, I have done consulting on that kind of stuff before, but it wasn't in that direct context. But I get that where people were just talking about some of the early social media stuff. People were wanting to talk about, how do you think this could impact our company? And it was just like, well, you let an employee post, I hate my job, this company sucks, and 1 million people read that. Don't you think that might have a negative impact? And I mean, you don't understand how this can get amplified. And I think just controlling your executives from that perspective, because you can imagine if a CEO of a company went on and well, not that we've ever seen that, but went on, the Twitter or just something and said, this company is going down the tubes, even if it was sarcastic, even if it was just being, glib, it would be chaos.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think, when you think about account compromise, we've actually seen that a few times, right?
Yeah.
You have a corporate account that gets popped.
Yeah.
And the market manipulation associated with being able to short a public traded company, pop their network, and then post a whole bunch of stuff all over their social media feed that's going to tank their stock.
If anybody wants to send us some insider tips,
no, please don't, because I held broker's licenses for 15
not her.
years.
I meant me.
I'd rather not go to prison.
It was the royal we. I wasn't talking about Jackie.
Hi, FINRA, SEC. I don't want to talk to you.
I have no ethical commitments here, so.
I would rather stay in good standing. Fun piece of information. There's a website called Broker Check that FINRA that regulates all kind of financial advisors. If you didn't know this, if you have a financial advisor, you can actually look them up on Broker Check and see every firm they've ever worked for, any disciplinary action they've ever faced.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, my Broker Check is clean, and I would like to keep it that way. But I think. So that Chuck came on to talk about that. That was fantastic. And then we talked with Chris Boehm from Zero Networks just about microsegmentation and kind of how that relates to AI. I had a really great briefing yesterday with Dan from Arctic Wolf, just talking about and it's interesting, we talked about the mid-market yesterday morning, and then Arctic Wolf mainly serves the mid-market, and we were just talking about how the big players are trying to move down there because it's the largest, piece of the market. So it was nice from my perspective because I got a little bit of confirmation on all of the opinions I spewed yesterday morning. So.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. I mean,
we've got some really good interviews today, so I'm excited about those.
Yeah, I have some fun ones today. So all of you are going to get to stick around and hear that. But I think Black Hat's going really well. It was the first time we had come back here since since the pandemic. I hadn't come to Black Hat, and So that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I was happy to see so many people, and we went to the Threat Locker party last night, and you didn't go to the Threat Locker party, but I went to the Threat Locker party, and they had lots of good food and free drinks.
We went to the Zero Networks party at S Bar, and they had amazing sushi. So I love sushi.
Well, that would have been nice too.
Yeah. Shout out Zero Networks.
Well, there's lots of parties. I got so many party invites. I didn't really know what to do with them all because, like I think I said before, I was like, I don't get a lot of party invites. It makes like, what's going on?
Well, so this evening I happen to be personally sponsoring the Sober Speakeasy at the Mob Museum with Sober and Cyber. So it's 6 o'clock. So if anybody needs something to do this evening they want to have sober fun before they go, either instead of or before.
Okay, well, yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
that's
because even if you are not personally sober, it's always nice for those of us who don't drink for people to come support us and hang out in our space, since we spend so much time hanging out in your drunk space.
She's not talking about me at all. Well, so we got a whole day, well, we got not a whole day, but we got all the way through to 12:30 Pacific time today with all of us doing interviews. So I hope that all of you will stick around and check them out. It should be fun, and we'll be here the rest of the week. So please stay tuned in, and we'll see you out there.